Hello all. In this 9-part series of JavaScript object-oriented programming, we'll be covering the topics right from the time when JavaScript was introduced, and then covering up the object-oriented principles of JavaScript, and then we will be going through the performance techniques that can be used to improve the user experience on the overall. And as the last thing, we'll be also covering the application architecture that can be used to provide a maintainable core on the UI side. So let's start. In this first part session, we'll be looking at ECMAScript, W3C Web Performance Working Group, and JavaScript. These four concepts will be covered in this first session. ECMAScript is the scripting language standardized by ECMA International in the ECMA 262 specification and ISO IEC 162. The language is widely used for client-side scripting on the web in the form of several well-known implementations such as JavaScript, JScript, and ActionScript. So what is ECMAScript? ECMAScript is just a specification. It is just a rule book that says how a client-side scripting language should look like, what all the functionalities should be provided by client-side scripting language. And JavaScript, JScript, and ActionScript are just instances out of it. They just implement the way ECMAScript specifies. ECMA International is an international private membership-based non-profit standards organization for information and communication systems. It acquired its current name in 1994 when the European Computer Manufacturers Association changed its name to reflect the organization's global reach and activities. As a consequence, the name is no longer considered an acronym and no longer uses full capitalization. So the whole point is this European Computer Manufacturers Association was introduced in the year 1961. Then on until 1994, it was only addressing the issues and problems related to the European continent. It was only addressing the European continent scope of the world. And as in such, in 1994, it changed its name to ECMA International to also address the world's issues with respect to the web application. So ECMA International is an organization that is now scoped across the world to address all issues related to the communication systems, information and communication systems. This organization was originally founded in 1961 to standardize computer systems in Europe. Membership is open to large and small companies worldwide that produce, market, or develop computer or communication systems and have interest and experience in the areas addressed by the group's technical bodies. It is located in Geneva. The current edition of ECMAScript is 5.1. ECMAScript is in some terms matches with JPA. And what I mean by JPA is that JPA is the technology. In fact, I shouldn't even call it as a technology. It is just a specification which says what are all the specifications and functionalities of an persistence provider. So if you take Hibernate or Toplink, they are just implementations of JPA. So similarly stands as what is ECMAScript. ECMAScript is a specification, whereas JavaScript, JScript, and ActionScript are just implementations out of it. JavaScript is a dynamic programming language. It is commonly used as part of web browsers whose implementations allow client-side scripts to interact with the user control the browser, communicate asynchronously, and alter the document content that is displayed. So let's take take a look as to what all in the next 2-3 slides we'll be looking at why JavaScript is called in various terms, and one of the terms being dynamic programming language. Why it is called as a dynamic programming language? It is dynamic programming language because unlike other programming languages, it allows a given variable to change its data type during runtime. That is, a variable that is assigned as a string can be changed down the line during runtime to be a number. So this is how JavaScript achieves dynamic programming language. This is just one of the aspects of it. So let's take a look at an example of it. So in this okay, let's take another example of it. Okay, this is fine. So there is an object that we have declared it to be a string. We are alerting what is the type of the object, and then when we are instantiating the same object to be a number, so dynamically changing the data type of the object, and ultimately again displaying the type of the object. So let's see how it works and the output that it displays. So first it prints it as a string, and then it prints it as a number in its alerts, ensuring that the data type of the variable is changed. Brendan Each, the person behind JavaScript discovery. Dynamic programming language is a term used in computer science to describe a class of high-level programming languages which at runtime execute many common programming behaviors that static programming languages perform during compilation. These behaviors could include extension of the program by adding new code, by extending objects and definitions, or by modifying the type system. Modifying the type system is what we just saw through an example. In programming languages, a type system is a collection of rules that assign a property called a type to the various constructs, such as variables, expressions, functions, or modules that a computer program is composed of. So what it says is, now that object is assigned to a string, it is accessible to all operations that string is capable of. Similar holds good for a number. So that's what it says. The type defines the functionalities that an object is capable of. So there are two other names that JavaScript owns. JavaScript is classified as a prototype-based programming language with dynamic typing and first-class functions. We have already seen dynamic typing, prototype-based scripting language, and first-class functions is something that we can see now. Prototype-based scripting language. So let's take an example of prototype scripting language. So in this, you will observe that, let me not have this line in my code. So in this code, you would have seen that there is a base object, and we are constructing objects out of it. So what I want to say in this part is, unlike other programming languages, unlike other object-oriented programming languages, we don't have the concept of classes defining objects. In JavaScript, it will be objects that will be defining other objects. Whereas in say we take C++ or Java, it will be classes which will be defining the objects. We will be first coming up with a class, and will just be a template, and any new objects that we will be creating out of it will be just another object. That does not hold good in the case of JavaScript. In the case of JavaScript, we don't have the concept of classes. And this is as per ECMAScript 5.1, that there are no concept of classes. There is a proposal of classes in ECMAScript 6. So, in this case, we have an object defined with two properties, value and display message. We are having another object that is created out of the base object. So now the base object stands as the prototype for my another object. This way, this is one of the feature of JavaScript, and it is also called as first class functions. The reason being, you can pass around the functions. Unlike other programming languages, you can pass around the functions. So in this case, in this example, you will see that there is a my function function defined, and there is another function that is also defined. So let's, what JavaScript does is, for this function that is there, it is actually going to create an object with the name as myfunc, and keeps it aside. So the object that is hence created, the myfunc, okay, that is exactly what is passed to the invoker function here. And though the parameter name is completely different from what is passed here, you can use the same to call the function myfunction. So the whole point is, you can pass function objects to another function objects and return function objects from a function. So this is why it makes JavaScript being called as first class functions. So let's exemplify it. I am from myfunc. So this is something that is an alert that is coming from this place. Prototype-based programming is a style of object-oriented programming in which behavior reuse known as inheritance is performed via a process of cloning existing objects that serves as prototypes. This model can also be known as prototypal, prototype-oriented classless, or instance-based programming. JavaScript do not have classes. Class comes from ECMAScript 6. So the earlier example that we saw with respect to the prototypes is what this slide exactly tells about. So in this case, we consider that this object is the prototype of this another object. The first object is the prototype of the second object, and that is the whole concept of the prototype based programming. The various names that are given to it are prototype oriented, classless, or instance based programming. Instance based programming. So this is delegation. Delegation is a simple concept in object-oriented programming languages, very similar to dynamic method dispatching. The way the prototypal objects are inherited, and that inheritance helps us in resolving the method call during runtime. That we can see with an example in a later section. So rarely it refers to a programming language feature making use of the method lookup rules for dispatching so-called self calls, as defined by Lieberman in his 1986 paper using prototypal objects to implement shared behavior in object-oriented systems. Delegation is a language feature supports the prototype based programming model. The extension of a given JavaScript file is .js. The internet media type is application bar JavaScript. So this ends my first slide. And what it says basically is about the introduction of JavaScript, the various names that are given to JavaScript in this section. That's what we saw. The introduction and the various names that are given to JavaScript. Thank you.